Ed Hunzeker was selected by the Manatee County Commission to serve as Manatee County's administrator in 2007. Since then, Ed has ushered in a mantra of accountability, civility, and ethics, leading to a more business-like, customer-friendly county government. And I can say from my personal experience with him, he definitely exhibits all those qualities. He's a graduate of St. Louis University, where he received his Bachelor of Science and MBA degrees. He brings with him a strong background in government operations, beginning with his tenure as Deputy County Auditor for St. Louis County Government, 15 years Assistant County Administrator with Hillsborough County, and an additional 3 years as the County Manager of Osceola County. In addition, he served approximately 10 years as Chief Financial Officer for Bi-State Development Agency in St. Louis, Missouri. His experience covers all facets of governmental operations. Ed is married to Sharon, and Sharon, God bless her. Ed just told me that she was just involved in a car accident, that he was the driver, and so she's looking for a good attorney, and but she's doing well, and so bless her. And they have 3 adult sons and 5 grandchildren, and he enjoys reading, travel, and golf. So with that, I'd like to introduce our friend Ed Hunzeker.
Good afternoon. I'm going to put a timer on me because they said a half hour, and my wife tells me I can bore anybody to death on any number of subjects. I'm a fountain of worthless information. So, with that, today we're going to talk a little bit about the future. We're going to try and talk a little bit about the future because this one. This one would be Charles. How are we doing, Charles? Better. All right, so we want to talk about the future. And John and I have been practicing this. This is the first time we're practicing this. So we're going to see if we can stay in sync. Because this is an exercise we want to take out to the community for the next year, which is talking about the future. And it's about time. We've been suffering through a recession in the government. Now, most of you in the private sector can say that that recession ended a while back, but it just ended for us in the government this past year, or this year, because we finally got current revenues to equal current expenses, and we stopped living off of our savings account. And so for the most part, the only thing we could do is what we did the year before. And now it's time to start thinking about the future, and the only way we're going to get there is we have to look to the past. So this exercise you'll see across the community in the coming days and months is an exercise we call Back to the Future, where we take people back to 1997, and then we get to today, and then we're going to jump out to the year 2037. And the question is, where are we at this point? We're out of the recession, as I said. Current revenues equal current expenses. We survived that recession. During that recession, we took out 25% of the government and 18% of the workforce. Over 300 positions we took out of the government. During that same time, at the beginning of the recession, 2007, there were about 300,000 people in Manatee County. There's now 375,000 people in this county. We haven't put back what we took out when there was 300,000. So it's a struggle trying to do things around the county. When people call Public Works and they want service and they say, well, it's 6 to 8 weeks before we can get to you, they find that unacceptable. We're trying to work through that because as we went through the recession, unlike many other governments, we didn't raise taxes. We didn't raise property taxes. But today, our property tax revenue is lower than it was in 2007. Our revenues are lower, population's up, demand is up, and we're trying to struggle through and make things happen. And now we're trying to figure out what are we going to do in the next 20 years and how do we get there? And it's important to know where you're going. I like to tell folks when you go on vacation and you get in your car, you got to know where you're going. So when you get to the end of the driveway, you know whether to make a right or a left. If you haven't got any place to go, I guess either way is okay. But we're trying to figure out what are we going to do in the year 2037. The population people tell us there could be another 125,000 people in this county. We could be approaching 500,000 people. What do we do with them? Where are we going to put them? That is going to be the challenge. Should I look over and see where you are, John? Oh, we survived. Now, as we take a look at this visioning business, you got to understand there's no wrong answers with visioning. When you get by the visioning, you're going to get down to concepts, and concepts lead to plans, and plans lead to budgets. But your annual budget, from the county's perspective, is should be the tool to implement our long-term plans. And so it's important now that we start looking out as what's the plan? Where are we going? What do we need to do? We need the community to participate in this discussion. We could have everybody close their eyes and think about the year 2037. And first you got to get by, what are my kids going to be looking like? What are my parents going to be doing? What do I need to do to this house? And you got to get beyond that. What's the community going to look like? What do we want it to look like? How do we maintain the quality of life we have today? I said at one of these chamber luncheons once that we live in paradise, and people are starting to catch on. And the boomers are retiring. They're going to come our way. We can't stop them. When people think that we can stop development, it just doesn't work that way. This is a property rights state. People own property, can develop it. They have to follow our rules. But our rules can't be put up a fence. It's popular in DC these days, put up a wall. We can't go there. So what are we going to do? If you close your eyes and you think about things, what's a transportation network? How are people going to move? Autonomous vehicles? I was talking to Ernie about that. He thinks that'll be here in 10 years. And you'll go to work in a car, and then you'll send the car home, and that car will take the kids to school, and then it will go home, and your spouse can take it out to go shopping. It's like, one-car garages? What a concept. We got to get to our friends in the building industry and tell them they got to rethink those garages. What's the transportation look like? What's the school system going to look like? So this is an exercise we're not just going to focus on the county. We need everybody, the cities, the school board, everybody to thinking, what do we need to do? How do we partner to get things done? What's a library system going to look like? People say we don't need libraries. You got your Kindle. Libraries are more of community centers these days. It's a gathering place. What is that library system going to look like? What's our park system? We're just finishing up now a parks master plan. We haven't done one in, what, Charlie, 25 years? And that'll be what will guide us for the next 20 years. So pay attention to that park master plan. Where's the water and sewer lines? We talk internally that if we're going to deal with 125,000 people, how are we going to manage that? And I like to say, if you've got a teenager in your household and you say you manage your teenager's life, I know you're a liar, because those of us have had teenagers. You might be able to steer them, but you're not going to be able to manage them. Well, how do we steer growth? Well, first and foremost, where's the water and sewer lines? Where are we going to put the water and sewer lines? What's the long-range master plan for water and sewer? We have one. So we follow the water and sewer master plan, and everybody in the community ought to agree that where those lines are going. Then are the roadways going the same place? Are the parks going to be where the water and sewer lines are? The libraries? The district offices for the sheriff? One of the concepts we have right now, the home office in downtown Bradenton, is where everybody comes to do business with the government. When there's 500,000 people in the county, are we going to ask them to come to downtown Bradenton to do business? Or are we going to take government out to the people? Regional service centers, where the public doesn't have to come down to fight for a parking space and meander their way through the building. There's better ways to do it, but where are those regional service centers going to be? Parks, the port, the airport, what are all those going to look like? What should they look like? What would you like them to look like? So we're going to visit with the board on the 14th of the month and go over this Back to the Future concept. Going back 20 years and coming forward, and you get to that oh wow moment that, wow, things have really changed. In 1997, there was no Lakewood Ranch. What could possibly be 20 years out? And how are we going to get there? It's going to be a challenge. If the board, good afternoon, board members. My adult supervision, they keep an eye on me here. What are we going to do? How do we manage this growth that is going to come, and what decisions do we have to make today in order to get to the year 2037? A couple of points. One, I told you roughly 125,000 people are coming our way. But the landfill out on Lena Road, where all of our garbage goes today, will be closing. It will be filled. Where's the next landfill? The jail as we know it today up at the port is an old building now. It'll be a lot older then, and it's crowded now. Where's the next jail? And I've told elected officials over the years, one thing you don't want to have to do as an elected official, cite a jail and cite a landfill. Let somebody else do that, because nobody wants either in their backyard. That's going to be a challenge. How do we deal with it? It's things that we need the entire community there. And how do we do it all without increasing taxes? Nobody wants to see a tax increase. How do we pay for all of this? Whatever this is that we determine. Who pays? The old saying about don't tax me, don't tax thee, go tax the fellow behind the tree. I was giving a speech to a group during the recession, and I was telling how we were downsizing the government, laying off employees, cutting back services. And a lady in the front row raised her hand and said, I don't agree with what you're saying. I said, what don't you agree with? And she goes, we don't want less government, we just want to pay less. Oh, I should get a tattoo. What a bright idea. And what's going to hurt, and what took us so long to get out of the recession, is you'll recall during the recession, the state legislature adopted an additional 25,000 homestead exemption. Who's a homeowner here? You enjoyed that 25,000 homestead exemption. Well, you're going to get to vote on that again in November of 18. That'll go into effect in 20. And we will vote for another $25,000 homestead exemption. And that is part and parcel why our revenue is still lower than it was in 2007. And we haven't put the library hours back to what the library hours were in 2007. What was it, an 18% reduction in library hours? When I was a kid, we did our homework at the library, but our libraries close before the sun goes down. What's that all about? Why? How do we afford to provide service to a community, especially libraries, parks, public works, all those services? But we're going to take another $9 million hit to the budget in 2020 because we're going to vote for that additional 25,000 homestead exemption. And the interesting part, I don't think any of our state legislators are here, but we all vote for those folks, and they're going to lower our revenue. And then they're going to ride on the fact that they reduced taxes. Not their taxes, our taxes. That 25,000 hurts our budget, not the state budget. But everybody will run for office saying that they reduce taxes. And we'll all vote for it, no matter what it does to the libraries or the parks or public safety. It'll be a challenge to do with less. And automation will help, but only so much. But we'll vote for it. And 2037 will come, and we'll still be here. It's a question of what's the quality of life that we want. I don't think anybody works for Walmart here. Good. We always talk around the government about, do we want to be the Walmart of states? Everything's cheap. Sometimes people will pay for quality. People like quality. If we didn't like quality, every little retail shop would close and we'd all go to the big box stores and do our shopping. Or do it shopping Amazon online. What's the quality of life we want and how much are we willing to pay is a discussion that we ought to have over the next few months, next year, in order to get those decisions out for the community as a whole to understand. And we like to think in government that the whole world is watching us every day, but I suspect a good portion of the community doesn't know who any of us in the government are, and they could care less. When they take the garbage out in the morning, they just want to make sure it's gone when they get home at night. And that's what they think of government. And the only time they think of government is when it's still there at night. Then they think about us. But it's going to be a challenge for all of us to think about the future and what is it that we want. What's healthcare going to look like? What's the social service network? I'm real interested in the aging services that we provide in the government. Because I'm getting there and I'm going to need them. We're all going to need them. But we have to be thinking, what do we want? How are we going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? It's a challenge almost every government needs to take out to the public and have the conversation. We started this in 2011 with a program called How Will We Grow? And this is just an offshoot of that because we're finally coming out from being poor to having the capacity to start thinking about what are we going to do? Where are we going? What do we want to look like? Because absent a plan, we'll just do what we did last year and we'll do it all over again, but more people will show up. We got to have a plan and we need your help. So I don't know where we are in my timing. It says here I got a lot of time left, but I'd rather get to the stump the chump part where I let people ask questions about what the commissioners are up to. What we're up to in government, because it's our government. We have to be involved. We have to be open. That overused term, transparent. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Sometimes what we're doing, you read about in the paper, we sound like we're dumber than a stump. But there are reasons, and there are rationales, and there are revenues in some parts of the government that aren't in other parts of the government. Because you in the private sector, you earn money and you can spend it any way you want. We have 150 different funds, and one fund can be flush with cash and another one's sucking wind. And we don't explain that all so well because looking at a government budget is one boring exercise. Right? It's a challenge for us to even understand it, but it is what the law prescribes and we follow it to the letter. But with that, I'm going to slow down talking and I'm going to let you ask questions. And if I can't answer it, John can. And I have all these helpers here. Yeah. And thank you for commissioners for being here. I appreciate it. So, folks, ask away. This is good. I can get to dessert. The question is, what could the local colleges and universities be doing better? It's creating a workforce. We spend an awful lot of money on economic development, job creation in this community. We partner with the EDC. We have Karen Stewart back there and Jerry Lopez that work this every day. But it's a package. We can offer incentives. We can offer quick review from a development review standpoint to attract businesses to relocate here and to create jobs. But it's really much more than just us. When somebody moves here, A business relocates. The business comes with a CEO, and the CEO comes with a spouse. And usually there's some children that follow here. What's the school system like? Why would they want to come here if the school system isn't a quality school system? Why would they want to come here if we don't do anything for the arts? We don't do anything for entertainment. What are they going to look like? How do we market our community to create quality jobs in our community if we're just the Walmart of communities? We have police, and we have fire, and we have courts, and that's about it. Really? Who wants to be there? Pay for something. Make a good school system. Get involved in the arts. Make sure the libraries stay open later at night so people can go and enjoy it. It's important to make it a community-wide effort, and the universities creating those jobs are important, integral, oh so important. 2 weeks ago, I was visiting a company that relocated here. They're headquartered in France, and they want to invest more, but one of the issues they raise is workforce housing. You create jobs, you got to create housing. Not everybody can go out and buy the McMansion at $500,000 and up when you're sitting there with a load of college debt riding on your back. How do we create that workforce housing? Challenge. Good question. We need the universities. We need them to work together. Question is access to health care. As we jump from 375,000 to almost 500,000. That is such a question because locally we are challenged. The board's challenged every year because the people that make the rules are in DC and Tallahassee. And every year they change the rules around. Who's going to get funding? Who's not going to get funding? How does the funding work? And then we have to react to that in funding the needs of our community. It is going to be an open issue with I see no end in sight. The feds seem to want to dismantle the Affordable Care Act without putting anything else in its place. And the state will react to whatever the feds do. And then we're down here on the tail end, and it's an unknown. It's a big unknown healthcare across the country, and it'll hit us here. Wish I had an answer. This is where I say that's really a bad question. That's a tough one. One of the issues is how do we pay for government? You know, what we pay for today, we pay for it this way because we always have. Well, we should take a little time and step back and see how do we do this. One of the odd things we have in Manatee County is stormwater, and it's a big issue after the rains and the hurricane this year. How do we pay for that? Today, all of our stormwater efforts are funded by people who create garbage. Why? Because we always have. You talk to people that create garbage and they go, I'm paying for what? We take it all out of our solid waste fee, and we ought to have a stormwater fee. And we're going to be looking at that. The board's challenged us to come up with a plan to implement a stormwater fee. Years ago, the then Board of County Commissioners, none of these fine folks were in power at the time, they adopted a stormwater ordinance. They just forgot to do the fee. That's one thing we need to do. Getting about to put a fee in place. One of the things that we're blessed with is the voters approved that half-cent sales tax to take care of the things we already own. And we are blessed with that, but that will take care of what we're building, but we charge impact fees to new growth. And it's a pretty stiff fee, one of the highest in the state. I don't think it's slowed down development all that much at all. It's just a cost of doing business. But once you build it, how do you take care of it? What's the revenue stream to take care of when you build a playground in a park? After 10, 15 years, it's going to need fixing or replacing. And that's what the sales tax is going to do for us. What other revenues are out there? One of the things we found during that research is the most inexpensive place to live from a tax perspective between Key West and the Panhandle is unincorporated Manatee County. The millage rate in unincorporated Manatee County is 0.6 mils. In Hillsborough County, the unincorporated millage rate is 6 point something. We're 0.6. But nobody likes to raise taxes, but 0.6 as we continue to grow. Did you show that slide about the population movement? Did I miss that?
Yeah, I did. I'll go back to it.
The population movement, back in 1950, the center of population in the county was downtown Bradenton. And then it moved west, and then it moved a little south. And then it started moving east. And today, the population center of the county is just west of the interstate between 64 and 70. But by 2037, the population center could match the geographic center, which is roughly Lakewood Ranch Boulevard and State Route 70. We need to put a lot of assets out there for the people that are going to be out there. At 0.6 mils, what kind of services are we going to provide to them? We'll pick up your garbage once a month? There are no parks, libraries. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it at 0.6 mils? We got to think about how we pay for things. You're doing it by being here today. Stay tuned, watch it. I found out over the years that the public will pay for things if they know where the money's going. You pay your property taxes, it goes to this thing called the general fund, and people think that's kind of like a black hole. What happens in there? But a stormwater fee that goes into a stormwater fund and only can be used for stormwater. When we sold the concept of the half-cent sales tax, the idea is it's to take care of the things we already own. Impact fees pay for the new stuff. But those things we already own, fixing the roads that we have, fixing the parks, remodeling libraries, that's what the sales tax is all about. And we produced a list of things that we would do with that money. When you think out to the year 2037, the sales tax 15 years, everything on that list that we published when the voters approved it would have been built by 2037. If we do what we said we were going to do, we should be going back to the voters within 15 years and renewing that to keep it going. Being as efficient as we can, being effective. We had this Citizens Budget Restructuring Committee that the board appointed to look at our revenues and to look at how we did business. And I think the board appointed 7 people, and then there were representatives from the Chamber, the EDC, the Island Chamber, the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. And so the entire committee was 13 people, and I know there were some Tea Party people on that committee. And I know that they thought they'd come to these meetings and they'd find the fat in government, they'd cut it out, and then they'd go home. And in pretty short order, we showed them, when we took out 25% of the government and we took out 18% of the workforce, we pretty well got the fat that was in the government. But we offered them the opportunity to go digging around if they wanted to. But in short order, they realized, now we're about as lean and mean as we can get. We've been living off of reserves. We probably could have cut more, but I went around to the board members after we cut that 25% out and showed them what's the next round of cuts. And that's not cutting back library hours, that's closing libraries. That's closing parks. I closed the pool at G.T. Bray Park and see how the public likes that idea. And they said, no, we've cut enough. And so we had enough in reserves to carry us to the current time where we got revenues back to equal expenses. And now we can start thinking about growing. But where do we grow? How do we grow? What's the most important thing? Now, it's easy for everybody to say public safety is the number one thing. We all agree. Then I ask the question, what's number 2? What's number 3? What's number last? What do the people think is the lowest priority thing we do in the government? But I think we've already cut those things out. So how much are we going to grow? That's the discussion of how will we grow? What are we going to look like in 2037? How do we help? What revenues do we need to put into place? Or how much leaner can we get? It's most important that we act as a region. I've been around this business long enough to know that it's not cities versus cities. It's not counties versus counties. It's regions versus regions. We're part of the Tampa Bay region, and we need to be involved, stay tuned, work together. I'm on a first name basis with the county administrators in all the counties in the region. But how do we work together to accomplish the increased value of our region versus Central Florida versus the Atlanta region, the Chicago region? It's going to be a challenge, and we've got to be competitive. In the school system, in the university system, our business community has to be competitive. We lose employees all the time to surrounding counties because we're not the highest paid county government. We have 12 department directors in Manatee County. They have 40 department directors in Hillsborough County. Our span of we do the same things they do, but they've got more economics on their side than we do. Well, it's the chamber, the county, the school board, the various chambers, the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. We'll be in front of them. We'll be out to the island, folks, and have a chat with them. What is it that you want at the end of the day? We've been talking for years about every spring we complain about traffic to the island. We've complained about it for 20 years, and 20 years from now we can still be complaining, or we could do something about it. Make it expensive to go to the island. People don't want to hear about it. Why is there free parking out there? Charge for parking. Make it expensive to go to the island. Put a parking rod lot on the mainland and have shuttles take people to the island. Put a toll on the bridges to the island. They do that down south. In other parts of the state, they charge people tolls to get to the islands, the barrier islands. And then when you get there, you get to pay for parking. We don't have to have the problems, but it's just the will to change. And it's so difficult for people to want to change. Why do we do what we do? Why do we make people that create garbage pay for it? Stormwater? Well, we always have. And you go to put a stormwater fee in place, there will be opposition. When we started with How Will We Grow back in 2011, we set out some things we were going to do, and we've been pretty successful in implementing those. One of those was to create what we call the district. And the district is the tax increment district that's Manatee County to the south, Manatee Avenue to the south, 301 to the west. That whole quadrant of the county was the early part of the county. That's where the county started, and it grew up along the Tamiami Trail, and it's a little worn. And we need to reinvigorate that part of the county. So we created the district. It captures all of the values of the property in that district to reinvest in the district. And the board's been good enough to save that money in order for us to pay and help change the grid system. I like to refer to everything east of the interstate as the land of cul-de-sacs. And on the west side, you got the grid system. And people like the grid system. And we've changed the rules of development on the west side. The board has adopted changes to the comprehensive plan and the land development code to allow greater density and intensity on the west side. That you can live, work, and play and not need a car. Over time, the focus will be redeveloping the west side. And that district is the key, and the money we raise there will be available to help and partner with developers that want to do redevelopment, and we'll partner with them and put our money up against their money to assure that development can take place, or redevelopment can take place. Jerry Lopez, would you please stand up? If anybody wants to do any development, there's Jerry. We did a nationwide search for that position, and we found Jerry, and we have great faith in her ability and her staff to make that revitalize the whole west side of the county. The buzzer went off. Any more questions? Ernie, it's yours. Thank you.
Okay, so we'd just like to thank Ed for coming today and speaking and letting us know everything that's going on. My question was I was going to ask him about the island traffic, but he expounded on that, and so we know his thoughts and views on that. So with that, again, we want to thank the Mosaic Company and Kaiser University for sponsoring the Headliner Series. This is the last series of the year. So with that, we'd like to wish everybody a safe travel back to work, and thank you again. Thanks, Ed.